MCAT Office Hours. It is Tuesday, January 13th, 2026. Petros, is this our first Office Hours of the year or no? Did we do one last week?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to 2026, friends. We are here with the new year. MCAT is in full swing. I think students have taken the MCAT already this year, and the questions are already coming in going, hey, I took the MCAT on this day. Was it as hard as I thought it was? The chem section seemed harder. There was more of this type of question. And Petros, I think people forget that there are lots of different versions of the MCAT test that go around.
You and I could be sitting next to each other, both taking the MCAT, and have a completely different experience as far as the questions that we get. And
why do they do that?
Cheating.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of it. Like, that's a big part of it. It's cheating. It's to randomize the sample as far as the content is concerned. It's a lot of it is around test security. So very, very different from, not very different, I should say. This is going way, way back, but 20 plus years ago when the test was on paper and pencil, there were different versions within the room. This is true for all this, any paper standardized exam before. Nobody was taking the same test, unlike in high school or college where everybody pretty much has, even in college in big lectures, they'll have multiple versions.
There's an A and B test of the test.
Yeah.
I think I remember that.
Yeah. So that's what it is. But it doesn't affect, it's like you might feel like yours was harder because it was, but then it's all compared against the previous 3 years worth of test takers as far as the normalization is concerned. So it doesn't change the outcome as far as what score it is that you would get, maybe by, 0.1 or something, but not.
Yeah. Our friend 60 Degree MD over at on Instagram said, got your live notification. Wanted to thank you for helping me create a great application to get an acceptance. They said they're currently an M3 with an MCAT score. Petros, dare I say, a 507. How did they ever get into med school with only a 507?
It's just one part of the application. So
perfection, my friends, is not the goal. For those who don't know, we're here to answer your questions on our MCAT Office Hours stream today. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, founder of Medical School Headquarters, author of the Pre-Med Playbook series, host of the Pre-Med Years, all-around cool guy. That's at least what they say. Petros Manasi, VP of Test Prep and Tutoring here at MSHQ. Coming over from Kaplan, 25 plus years experience with MCAT and pre-med programs over there. So you're building and tinkering and growing our fun MCAT stuff here. So we're wrapping up our winter MCAT immersive today. How has that gone?
It's gone well. I'm actually going literally right after this. I'm going to go teach the final session, and then we have an office hour later tonight. So I'm going to have to jump at least 5 minutes before the hour just so I can go into that room and set it up and make sure that everything is ship shape. But we have lots of exciting developments coming soon to a theater near you and to a Zoom room near you. Nice. The immersive was not it was the beginning. It was step one of many, many steps. So stay tuned is what it comes down to.
Stay tuned. Sweet. For those watching, come ask your questions. Our friend with the 507 also had a 3.2 with the horrors. So they're hanging out, having fun, and doing well. Apparently, they're in their third year.
That's the goal, right?
Means they made it through their preclinicals. They made it through step one, I'm assuming, at this point. So fantastic. Petros, for someone who is getting ready to maybe take the MCAT, let's say a month from now, right? February 13th is the sole date in February, the loan date in February. What should someone be doing with a month left to prepare for that date?
Yeah, there's a lot you can do in a month. I think that's the important thing to recognize is that a month is not. It's more than it seems. The key, I think, at this point is making sure that everything is done with intention and deliberately. So whatever time it is that you're spending studying for the exam, you are not just saying kind of blanket statement, I'm studying for the exam. It's very deliberate. There's a reasoning behind, a justification behind why you're doing the work that you're doing. So what I always say to students and will say to everybody watching is it's as simple as if I were to, go old school and pick up the phone and call you and asked you, what are you doing right now for the MCAT? And I knew that you were studying for the MCAT, you would have a very specific answer, right? It wouldn't just be, oh, I'm studying for the MCAT. It's, I'm reviewing 5 practice questions from the Chem Phys section in electrochemistry because I struggle with those questions or I go slower on those questions. So I have a reason behind why it is that you're doing the work that you're doing. So that kind of being very deliberate and intentional is the big part of it at this stage in the game, especially a month out. It's not the time to necessarily try to, learn something completely from scratch. So if there is material a month out that you're like, I've never known this, it's not that you can't know it. It's just there are other points for you to go get elsewhere. So it's a matter of picking your battles and winning the ones that you can win, that you're close to winning, as opposed to trying to start something completely new.
Yeah. You say often the best way to get a higher score on the MCAT is to get more questions right.
That is the best way to get a higher score on the MCAT.
Yeah. When you say like chase those points, oftentimes in life, right? It's deciding, do I lean into the things I'm good at or should I go get better at what I'm bad at? And when you say like go get more points, part of me is like, well, is that saying like lean into what I'm good at and go get an extra couple points in my best section? Or should I go lift myself up in those worst sections?
That's a good question that you ask, or a good challenge to my statement, right? There are only so many points that come from any given topic or skill that's being tested on the exam. So you can go, say, all right, let's say I'm at 95% on topic A and try to get that other 5%. That's not going to gain you a whole lot as far as your score improvement is concerned. If there's a topic, though, that you're at, let's call it 10%, but you don't have the right foundation and won't have enough time and runway to really grasp that concept, that's also probably not a place to go. It's the stuff that's in the middle, right? So if you're at like 50-50 on something, or you're kind of like middle ground in terms of your strength in a certain area, that's where the points live. That's where your opportunity lives. So if you're already really good at something, yes, lean into it to make sure that you continue to get those points, but you also don't want to be going on the other extreme to something that you're like, I've never understood this, or I just don't have enough time to really comprehend this. It's that middle ground. That's where the point opportunity initially lies. But that changes over time, right? So I might be at 10% with one thing now, 50% with something else, 90% with, topic C, let's call it. The one that's in the middle, I am able to move to 80%. Great. Now I've gained more points there. Now it's time to go to the stuff that I was at 10% on, right? Because now I have more point opportunities in that area. It's just a matter of time. So if you're looking at a month, you're probably focusing on that kind of middle ground. If you're looking at 3 or 4 months, you're focusing on the middle ground now, and then eventually the middle ground will become the high ground and the low ground can become the middle ground, right? So it progresses over time.
Yeah. Okay. Get more points. That's what it's all about. Our friend Adrian, you guys work so hard. Thank you for all you do. I'm here for all of it, and don't feel so in the dark due to all you share. Thanks, Adrian. Thanks for hanging out these last few weeks. Petros, I don't think you've met Adrian yet. Adrian, I think joined pre-med office hours last week. Adrian is a former, now I'm not going to remember the show, Biggest Loser, a contestant, and is now on her way to medical school. So that's very fun. The rest is the best. YouTube. I'm a senior in college applying for the first time, 3.5 GPA, 3.1 science GPA, no trend. I received my only D last year in human physiology. Should I retake physiology in my last semester? Petros, this is the MCAT office hours, but I wanted to throw this up, even though this is not an MCAT related question, because I think it's really important to let this person know. I don't know if you're ready to apply to medical school with a 3.1 science GPA and no trend. I think a lot of schools will consider you a pretty big academic risk without that trend. So, should you retake physiology? It's not super important you take physiology because it's not a prereq for almost any school. Um, but yeah, I'd be more concerned about that 3.1 with no trend than anything else. Pedros, I know you have a deck. Why don't we share the deck and we'll answer some questions along the way as well?
Yeah. I'll put it up. Why won't it let me? Oh, you're going to do it. There it is. Thank you. Yeah, so this one's a short one to kind of kick off the year in terms of really understanding how the MCAT is testing you. And I labeled this "Find the Key" because there's usually one little key piece of information or key evidence that you need to be able to identify or need to be able to find that will kind of unlock all the things that are going to face you as far as a certain question. And this is where the MCAT is very different from how you have historically trained yourself in terms of coursework, in terms of exams. In coursework exam and exams in the undergrad level, you're usually just being tested to see whether or not you know the information. On the MCAT, I'll say this, it's all about the application of the information that comes into play. So you get a question like this, and this is a very straightforward question, but also can be one that can easily throw you off if you don't have kind of that key indicator that you need in order to be able to solve it. It comes down to this, right? So the question's saying you've got a cell, it's exposed to a compound, and very deliberately I will say it doesn't matter what the compound is. And this is where sometimes students will also kind of get in their own way as far as questions go. They say, well, what's the compound? And I want to know all the characteristics of the compound. It doesn't matter what the compound is because they're telling you what the compound is going to do. It says the compound prevents the reoxidation of NADH to NAD plus in the electron transport chain. So this is clearly going to be a metabolism question, right? So now you're already kind of thinking, okay, I got metabolism, I've got NADH and NAD plus in the works here. And then they're asking you to identify which of the answer choices would explain why this is happening. So it's not about, what the compound is. It's not so much about what the compound does. It's about explaining why whatever this compound is does the thing that it does by you demonstrating that you understand how the electron transport chain works and where things are as far as the various steps are concerned, in terms of your understanding of metabolism as a whole. So this is where we say, okay, let's start to figure this out as far as the science itself is concerned. So they give us these 4 answer choices, and the first kind of thing that you have to do is not actually look at the answer choices. This goes back to the notion of you want to be looking for an answer as opposed to letting an answer try to find you. So yes, these are the answer choices. There are some patterns here, right? 3 of the 4 of them say the word increased. 1 of them says decreased. That's important, but not super important. It's just going up or going down as far as your order of how things go. But this is where you go back to the compounds or the science, and you say, well, you have the G3P dehydrogenase step in glycolysis. So this is, we're looking at glycolysis very specifically because that is, of course, as we think about kind of all these various steps here, right? This is where you would need, and I'm not going to go through all the steps of glycolysis. I'm not going to go through all the steps of the electron transport chain. That's not the purpose of today. The purpose of today is to really understand kind of what all these different pieces are ultimately, how they're ultimately coming together with all of this. But if you think through this and say, well, that step in glycolysis requires NAD plus to be an electron acceptor. When that NAD plus accepts an electron, good things start to happen because you say, all right, we've had that NAD plus that's accepting the electron. So now all of a sudden we have NADH. NADH, of course, is going to be available now later down the line and necessary, right, later down the line as far as the electron transport chain is concerned, and as far as ATP synthesis itself is concerned. So these are all kind of pieces that start to fall into play here. More importantly, if we have, and they've told us, and this is where you kind of have to pay attention to the question itself, they've told us that the NADH can't be reoxidized. That means, plain and simple, right, when you are oxidizing something, it's losing an electron. If it can't be reoxidized, it can't be oxidized again. So it just means that it's, because NAD plus goes to NADH, NADH then goes to NAD plus, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. What that's going to mean is that you're going to have a lower amount of NAD plus that's available. If you don't have NAD plus available, then the consequence is the step is going to slow down, because that G3P dehydrogenase requires a good source of NAD plus to be accepting electrons. So if you don't have that, that vehicle, that vessel to be accepting the electrons, then the whole process is going to slow down. And as a result of that whole process slowing down, that's why you have these metabolic changes that you're going to find. And that's going to tell us that it's going to be answer choice B, the decreased conversion of G3P to 1-bisphosphoglycerate, because that is the step, right? That is the step. So if you're not able to, if the dehydrogenase is not able to do its job, then you're not going to be able to go to the next step. So you're going to expect to see a decrease in the conversion of the G3P into the 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate. So this is the key here, and this is where kind of the lesson for the day is. The key is to always be looking for, or the key to find the key is to be looking for that one absolute fact that's going to be necessary, and understanding as far as the steps are concerned. So a question like this, it's not good enough for you to just know all the steps to glycolysis. You have to actually understand what the implications are of each of the steps of glycolysis. So the tip I will give you as far as studying, because it's really easy to fall in the trap of, I'm going to memorize all the steps of glycolysis or electron transport chain, whatever it might be, especially in any long process. The key for you as a learner is to go back into those steps, go back into those charts that you memorize, and start playing with it. Start asking yourself, and you can do this. You don't need to, find questions to do this. You can do this yourself. You can say, all right, let's pretend that this doesn't exist. So if there's no, in this example, if there's no NAD plus, what is that going to mean as far as implications up the line and down the line, right? What is it going to mean moving forward and moving backwards? And the easiest example, real life example that I'll give you is a drain. So, in your shower or in your sink, you have a drain. And the purpose of that drain is for when you're washing your hands, for the water to flow down the drain through the pipes in your home, out eventually to the sewer, and then from the sewer it goes to the water treatment facility, et cetera, right? So there's a whole chain of events that's occurring in order for that water to get out of your house and eventually to the water treatment facility. You can play around with it and say, all right, if I'm seeing a leak here, then what does that mean for the flow of the water before and after, right? Before and after that leak. Or if there's a clog in a certain place, where would I expect to see water showing up? Where would I expect to see water not showing up? So that's a simple real world example. Same thing is true for processes on the MCAT. So the more you can think through those things and think through kind of that process of what the implications are of the facts that you know, the better off you're going to be in the long run. So that's the mini lesson for today, as far as kind of a takeaway for you to consider and to think about. Ryan, questions?
So what's the answer?
The answer was B. The decreased conversion. Yeah, the answer was B. Sorry. Yeah. It also just so happens that that's the one answer choice that said decreased. That's the reason why I said, don't pay any attention to that, is sometimes, and you've probably heard me say this here, right? Sometimes there are answer choices that, there are two that say increase, two that say decrease, and then you can start to do some eliminations. it doesn't
Yeah.
apply in the situation because each answer choice is a different system or a different, different part of metabolism as a whole. So that pattern recognition doesn't apply in this example. I feel like it was maybe 3 or 4 office hours ago that we did one where you actually use the pattern to your advantage. There were 2 that increased, 2 that decreased, 2 that had an increase or decrease on the back end of the answer choice, and you can actually use that for solving your puzzle. That's not the case here. That's why I said pay no attention to it from that.
Yeah.
It's purely coincidental. Yeah.
I think this is a really good example for someone who is early on in their test prep and maybe far out from their test prep and haven't really started test prep, but they're actually in the thick of learning the electron transport chain, and whether it's the electron transport chain or Krebs cycle or all of the other cycles that they're going to learn moving forward. This is where I think it's important to understand, how does the MCAT test your knowledge? And so many students will just go and try to learn the electron transport chain and memorize how to draw it out, but they're not actually thinking about what each of those steps mean. And so it's really important, I think, as a student, as you're doing this, to sometimes I'll give the example of drawing an amino acid. Like, oh, I know the structure. I'm like, yes, you know the structure when you write it on the paper. But what if I take that paper and flip it around? Will you still recognize that structure? If you look at it from the bottom, will you still recognize that structure? And so it's taking each of these steps, no matter what you're studying, here, the electron transport chain or Krebs cycle, whatever, and trying to ask yourself as you're going through this process, how might the AAMC evil people who write these MCAT questions, how might they try to challenge my knowledge of this one specific step or this one specific enzyme or this one specific whatever, right? And go, okay, great. I'm not just memorizing, writing this out. I now want to understand what happens if I put my finger on this and block it. Like, what's going to happen? And understanding that.
That's 100% correct. You hit the nail on the head. It's the twist, right? It's the I can guarantee you almost that you're not going to see things drawn out or things written out the way that everyone has seen them drawn out and written out, because that's the whole point of the exam. If the point of the exam was just recall all the information, the structures of the amino acids, or list out the steps of glycolysis, fine, right? Like, that would be a different type of exam. That's a memorization exam. That stuff all doesn't matter. I mean, this goes back to, you've heard me say this 1,000 times. They're never going to reward you on just knowing content. Like, that's the bottom line. They will reward you for being able to apply the content. The more content you know, the more rewards you can get, yes, but they're never going to just say, tell me the 10 steps of glycolysis. Name me the enzymes, name me the products, name me the inputs, right? They're never going to do that. That's not the point of the exam. So,
yeah.
Yep.
And I think it's good practice for later, because step 1, step 2, step 3 are very similar in terms of they're not going to just challenge you and say, hey, a 67-year-old female presents with X, Y, and Z. And you're like, oh, I know what that diagnosis is. They don't want the diagnosis. They want, what's the sequelae from the treatment for that diagnosis? And you have to know all of the different things. So, understanding, my friends. Stop memorizing. All right, what other questions we have going? We have a multi-part question here. I'm a non-trad really struggling on how to prep for the MCAT. I've been reading Kaplan books chapter by chapter, doing some Anki flashcards, and just seem very lost. It doesn't help since I was last in undergrad 4 years ago, graduated in 2022, and having to relearn biochem, chem, and phys all over again. What should I do to really learn the material? I've looked on Reddit for others' strategies, but just feeling really lost and helpless. I've always wanted to become a doctor, and feeling that this exam will truly be my hindrance of accomplishing my dreams. Not a common issue. What do we do?
Yeah. Can you go back to the first part of the question? Is that possible? Perfect. Thank you. So I want to kind of break this down. So one, what I'm seeing here is a lot of content review, which is fine, right? It's been 4 years since you've seen the material. You need to refamiliarize yourself with the material. Absolutely, there's nothing wrong with doing that. But what I also see here is a lot of content review, which worries me that there's not enough actually learning how to take this exam, right? Reading books, whoever wrote them. I don't care who wrote them, right? Wikipedia, YouTube video, whatever it is, that's content review. Or learning content maybe. Anki flashcards, great tool. Nothing against Anki flashcards. Keep using them. But that is content review, right? That is not critical thinking, critical reasoning, et cetera, et cetera. What also I don't see here is a clear path as far as what I should be doing and when I should be doing it. So kind of words of advice is, it's not just about starting at chapter 1 and ending at chapter 10 or 20 or whatever it is, or starting at flashcard 1 and ending at flashcard 4000. It's about actually building out a plan of where your strengths and weaknesses are. Now, yes, it's been 4 years since undergrad, since you've seen this material, but some of it's going to have stuck, right? Hopefully some of it has stuck. So I would say step 1 is probably to take a diagnostic exam just to see kind of where you would be at if you were to go take the MCAT today. That will help you identify the content areas that you should be focusing on first and foremost. Second, it would help you identify and start to recognize the types of skills that you're going to need to be developing that are not content-based skills, but are, in fact, critical thinking and critical reasoning skills. And then build out a plan, right? Build out a plan to attack between now and when you're actually taking the exam. And I would say work with some kind of expert guidance as far as that. Forums like Reddit and all that, there's a lot of misinformation out there. I don't know if we have enough time for me to go into my rant about, right? It's people write things like, I scored in the 99th percentile and here was my 100-day plan. Everyone goes, I want to score in the 99th percentile, so I'm just going to follow this person's 100-day plan. One, we don't know if they actually scored in the 99th percentile. Two, we don't know if that plan worked for them or if it would work for other people, right? Everybody needs to make tweaks on things. Like, hindsight is always 20/20, so people tend to, this is me maybe being a little cynical, people tend to glorify, right? They're like, oh, I just did this, and this, and magically my score went to a 525. It's like, really, is that what actually happened? I don't know for a fact that is in fact going to be true. The one thing I will say is studying for the MCAT, it's a long process. It's not a quick process. This doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes there's more runway that's needed because it's maybe been a little bit longer since you've had some of that material. That's fine, right? There's no kind of like, you have to take, depending on when you want to apply, yes, you have to take the exam in certain years, but it's like, you should build out a plan that works for you and works with everything else that's going on in your life, and making sure that it's a balance and it's part of the process and not just like there for you.
Yeah. Our friend Nuffles wants to know, is this pre-recorded? Yes, it is. We use a powerful new AI generation tool where we are AI generated in real time, which is allowing us to answer this question in real time, even though this is pre-recorded. So thank you, AI. It's fantastic. Diana asks a question, where/how do you take a diagnostic exam? Pedros, almost all of the big, if not all of the big MCAT test prep companies out there that everyone knows offer a diagnostic test.
Yeah.
There are selfish reasons to offer a diagnostic test. It's
a
good lead
phenomenal
generation for the
marketing
companies.
tool. Yeah.
It's a marketing tool.
Yeah.
You actually recommend a different diagnostic test, which is not a half length. It is a full length exam. Talk about your rationale for that exam. And then, talk about that.
Yeah, so I would say the diagnostic exam to take is the free practice test from the AMC, the scored one, not the unscored one. The unscored one was released before the current version of the MCAT was put out. It was released as a sample exam so that students could see what the test would look like, but it doesn't give a score. The questions weren't vetted on the actual MCAT. They were just samples of what the test is going to look like. On the flip side, AMC does have a free practice exam. It is free, so there's no cost to you as far as taking it. It is a full exam, meaning it's going to take you 7.5 hours to take, but it will give you a realistic score of where you are today and it will give you the breakdown. This is, I think, the key with it. It'll give you the breakdown as far as not just, I mean, I say this all the time when I meet with students. I don't care what your score is right now so much so as I care for what the breakdown is, not just the individual section scores, but the breakdowns as far as the content areas of where you're strong and where you're weak, and then the skill areas of where you're strong and weak, because that can actually let you start to dictate where you need to be putting focus as far as your progress is concerned. So the reasoning behind taking the AMC exam is, one, it's from the actual test maker. Two, it will give you the proper breakdowns. They don't have any motivation to deflate your score on a diagnostic exam so that you then go, oh, I'm compelled, I need to get more preparation help or whatever it might be. And then similarly, the experience of taking the full-length exam is one thing, but the real value of taking the diagnostic exam is then your analysis of it and going back through the exam and figuring out, okay, which were the questions that I struggled with, which ones were the questions that I did really well at, where do I need to start putting focus, and then using the outputs of that exam, that diagnostic, to then dictate to you where you should start putting your prioritizations as far as material that you need to be reviewing, and then questions that you need to be practicing. So that's the rationale behind it.
Yeah.
So Diane, to answer your question, the place to go take it is the AMC website. Get the free one from them.
Get the free one. Yeah, and I know you have a specific methodology when you're meeting with students to actually review that kind of score sheet. And I know I'm really interested in trying to turn that into a tool for students to be able to upload that and get some feedback, and go from there. So super exciting. So there, Diana, hopefully that helped. She said thank you. All right. Our other friend who was struggling with relearning, I've also tried doing UWorld questions, but the exam was very stressful. Just not sure about how to relearn chem and phys. I've forgotten a lot of it. Petros, I think that's not a bad thing, right? Because the MCAT doesn't test on all of the things that student learned in undergrad. It tests on a very, very, very small level amount of what they learned.
Yeah. So I would say the way, I mean, so actually you're kind of answering your own question. Use your performance on those questions to dictate what chemistry and what physics you need to go back to. And then as far as relearning it, I mean, it might not even be relearning it. It might be just learning it again, right? So taking it from scratch and saying, start at the beginning, a dot represents an electron, a line represents a bond. And now we start with Lewis structures and take it from there. So that's really, but I think practice is really the way to learn it, right? Or not just learn it, but to retain it and to be able to understand it. So,
yeah. Do the practice, figure out what types of chemistry questions, physics questions you're missing, go learn the material for those types of questions, and go back and do more questions.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there you go. So are you saying based off your weak points, questions that you got wrong is the ones to study? Yeah.
Yes, I'll put the asterisks. It's not just the questions you got wrong. There might be questions that you got right that you have no idea why you got them right, or you know that you guessed and you got them right. Like do not find yourself into a false sense of security where you go, oh yeah, I totally know this stuff. No, maybe be real with yourself throughout this. The place to start though is in the weaker areas, and you'll start to see trends as you're going through more and more practice questions of the types of areas, the types of questions, the types of topics that you are getting wrong more often than you're getting right. And those should be the areas that you put the laser focus on, and that's where your point opportunities are going to come. You also have to couple that, though, with, at minimum, maintaining your performance in the areas that you're good at, right? You don't want to sacrifice one for the gain of the other, because that could also hurt you in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's just a big note for how to review those full-length exams is look at every single question, right or wrong, and review it and look at it and understand it. All good points. Let's see. Anything over on Instagram? I don't see anything right now. Keep those questions coming. Do you have a general kind of format for how to review a test in terms of like a spreadsheet setup or anything of like question one,
Yeah.
category, subject, whatever?
I mean, there's lots of versions that are out there. I think everyone's
Mm.
recreated the same wheel effectively, but it
Yep.
comes down to two factors. So whatever works for you are the columns that a student can create. I'll tell you what the factors are. So
Yeah.
factor one is location. So when you say I'm going to build a spreadsheet and you have one column that says section, the next column says passage number, the next column says question number, that's just GPS location. That's just coordinates to know where the question was on the exam. So that's up to a student how they want to do it. So you want to do it by question number, you want to do it by section, that's up to you. I don't really care. What I care
Okay.
about is the analysis side of it, right? So it's the why I got it wrong, like basically what screwed me up, right? So what did I mean, I'm just being, plain talk here, right? Like, did I get in my own way? Do I not understand this concept as well as I thought I understood the concept? Do I have a misunderstanding or an opposite understanding of it? I think that V is equal to PNRT instead of PV is equal to NRT, right? I didn't know the formula. So understanding what went wrong essentially is the kind of basis of it. Sometimes it's very simple. It's that I knew all the stuff, I didn't interpret the question correctly, or I misread the answer choices, right? So there's a kind of that's the more contextual, subjective analysis that you have to do for yourself. And this is the area that students, quite frankly, don't spend enough time doing, right? They get overconfident. They're like, oh yeah, I got that one wrong. Oh, I see why. And then they move on to the next one. They don't actually take the time to really fix the problem or fix the root cause of the issue.
Yeah.
And then that leads you to the action items that you need to set for yourself, the goals that you need to set for yourself of what you're going to do so you don't get that same type of question wrong the next time, right? You'll never see the same question twice between when you're studying and when you take the MCAT, but you'll see questions that are almost, parallel, perfectly to each other. The numbers have maybe changed but the skill that's required to answer the question has stayed the same. So that's the second part of it, is your analysis and your action that you're going to take. And then there's the reinforcement, which is, again, like the next area that's oftentimes ignored, where you then say, okay, here's how I'm going to reinforce this skill. And that usually entails doing practice questions to reinforce a certain skill. It's about repetitions, right? The more repetitions you get at doing something, the better you'll become at it, or the more comfortable you'll become at it. So that's the right. I can tell you how I can. What's that?
All I picture, I'm reading the Harry Potter books for the first time because they came out on Audible with a full cast, so it's really fun to listen to. And all I picture is Dobby the house elf just like banging his head, going like, "Dobby sucks at biochemistry." I don't know why that popped into my head.
Maybe that'll be our next book series. Is a
I'm gonna
Harry
shove
Potter?
my hand under an iron. Poor Dobby.
Right, there you go.
Anyway. A follow-up question here from Nuffles. Follow-up to that. Let's say I want to do Altius's full length, something week. Should I review only the things I got wrong throughout the week until the next week? Again, right and wrong. Right and wrong. Any physics tips? Any good resources, tips for gaining skills with the equations?
Practice questions.
Do
Seriously.
the
No,
questions.
that's like,
Yeah.
people are like, oh, give me a formula sheet. No, you gotta know how to use the formulas, right?
You have to apply them.
You have to apply them.
Yeah.
It's one thing. Professors will say, oh, you can bring a formula sheet into the midterm. Great. But if you don't actually practice using the formulas, you're not going to know which formula to go to when you're taking the midterm. So what was the point? Right.
Yep. There wasn't one. Yeah. if I hand you a time machine and you don't know how to use the time machine is useless.
That's right.
All right. Why don't we end a little bit early? I know you got to jump to your MCAT immersive course or class, last class of our immersive. We have, I'll put this back up here. If you want to schedule a consult with our team, you can do so, mshqconsult.com, or scan that QR code. That'll take you right there as well. You can schedule a consult with our advising team to learn how we can help you with your applications or your pre-med path. You can schedule a call with Petros and the test prep team to learn how we can help you with the MCAT as well as subjects. Right, Petros? We can help with individual subjects a student may be struggling with in undergrad.
We do that very, very frequently and actively. So we can help you as you're taking these classes.
All that good stuff.
All that fun stuff.
All right, friends. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.